Court. I'm here on behalf of Wills, Wilson John Baptiste. He's in the first row in the middle. Judge, and my proposed third parties come forward, please. Judge, I'm proposing my client's mother, Alice Jean-Baptiste, and his girlfriend, Adriana Cherie Roberts, as potential third-party custodians.
Ladies, would you please raise your right hand and swear you in? And I'll ask you to answer one at a time.
Do each of you swear or affirm that the answers to the questions are going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Speak up, ladies, please.
You do? I do.
Okay. Lower your hands. What is everything, ma'am? May I have you spell the first and last name, please?
Adriana.
Into the microphone, please.
A-U-D-R-I-A-N-A. Roberts. R-O-B-E-R-T-S.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. And next.
Next to the same, ma'am, please.
Alice Alison Jean-Baptiste, A-L-I-S-O-N, A-L-I-C-E, J-O-H-N, B-A-T-T-I-S-T-E.
Thank you. Mr. Butler is going to ask each of you some questions to make sure that you qualify, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Reynolds to ask you some questions too. So go ahead, Mr. Butler.
Thank you. I'll start with Ms. Roberts. Ms. Roberts, stand close to the mic, please. Okay, Ms. Roberts, what is your relationship to my client?
I am his girlfriend.
And you stepped forward to be a part-time third-party custodian?
Yes, sir.
Do you work?
Yes, sir.
Where do you work?
I work at Internal Medicine Associates.
And what do you do there?
I'm a scheduler.
And now you and he were aware that from me that there was a warrant outstanding, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you all got in touch with me, is that right?
Yes, sir.
I got in touch with the police department.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, before the warrant actually issued, we heard that they wanted to talk with him, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you all got in touch with me,
Yes, sir.
and then how long was it before we learned that a warrant had issued? Yeah, but I mean from the time you first got in touch.
There wasn't a warrant
At that time? But
Correct.
it's been at least, what, a week to 10 days, 2
Right.
weeks or so?
Yes.
Okay, and in that time, Mr. Jean-Baptiste did not try to flee, is that right?
Correct.
And when I told you that the police officers told me that they did issue a warrant, you will turn him in?
Yes, sir.
In fact, he turned himself into my office, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and I took him down to the jail to be
Yes, sir.
arrested on the warrant, okay. Now, you understand that as the potential third-party custodian, your duty is to the court, you understand that?
Yes, sir.
And I'm gonna give you the third-party custodian cards, one for you and one for mom. And this card has on it the phone numbers that you have to call in the event that there's a violation. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
And I told you that if you fail to follow the court's orders, that you would be arrested yourself, right?
Yes, sir.
And you have a family, don't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I take it that you're not going to get arrested.
No, sir.
Okay, so that means you must follow the court's order to the letter, and you're prepared to do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There may be some other questions, please, Steve.
How are you?
I'm good.
So, how long have you known Mr. Jean-Baptiste?
For about 4 years.
And how long have you been dating?
For over a year.
Okay. And do you understand what the allegations are in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
What's your understanding of what this case is about?
That he is indicted on several felony charges.
Okay, but do you know the facts surrounding what the case is?
Yes.
Okay. And what's your basic understanding of what the facts are?
That he is, well, he's in jail due to a shooting.
Due to shooting. So, are there any guns or weapons in your home?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And I guess one of the questions we always have is how, since you're in a kind of a girlfriend-boyfriend relationship, how you can assure the court that you can make sure that he will abide. You tell him not to go somewhere, he says, no, I want to go somewhere. How you can make sure you can abide by the court's rules to make sure he follows his bail conditions.
I'm a law-abiding citizen, so I'm not going to put myself at risk.
Okay. And you feel you're in a good position to make sure that he obeys the things that you tell him to do and make sure that he does what you say?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I know, I think you said it, and I kind of missed some of this, but exactly what's the kind of scheduling and what kind of situation will you be?
So I work Monday through Friday from 8 to 4, and on those days he will be with his mother, and we can switch off and on pertaining to sleep schedule.
Okay. And so the rest of the time he'll be with you?
We go back and forth with his mom, so yes, but most of the time.
Okay. And so you can make sure, like I said, some of the probably rules would be no weapons, make sure he doesn't go in any bars, things of that nature. Are you okay with those?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you know who the other witnesses or people involved in this case are?
No.
Okay. So, and I'm assuming you probably get to talk to Mr. Butler, but he can make sure that you know who those are so that you can make sure he has no contact with those individuals.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you're okay with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I don't have any further questions for you.
Okay, thank you.
Wait a minute, I do.
Sorry.
Ms. Roberts,
Yes, sir.
you, by volunteering to do this, one way to put it might be that you're volunteering to give him the power to get you in trouble. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Why is it that you think he won't exercise that power?
That he will not get me in trouble
He won't get you in trouble. What makes you think that?
because he's been good about it so far, and I trust that he wouldn't put me in that risk to get in trouble.
It makes sense, yeah. Okay, let me ask one more thing. What is your motive for giving him that power?
What is my motive?
For volunteering to do this for him?
My motive is to hopefully around this time just to make better, right decisions in regards to this matter, and just do his best to not get him in any further trouble.
Do you think that facing trouble, facing your own problems that you've created rather than fleeing from them is in his long-term best interest?
Than him fleeing from them?
Do you think that facing his problems rather than fleeing from them, running away from them, is in his long-term best interest?
Yes. I do.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. Thank you. We need to ask Ms. Jean-Baptiste. Actually, it's Jean-Baptiste, isn't it?
JOHNBAPTISTE.
Jean-Baptiste.
Thank you. Miss Jean-Baptiste, that's your son over there?
Yes, sir.
And you understand that you're stepping forward, and as I told you, it's like babysitting a 2-year-old. You don't let them go anywhere without you, and you don't leave them alone.
Yes, sir.
And obviously, you know what he's like when he was 2 years old. It's the same situation.
Yes, sir.
Your obligation, of course, is to the court. Remember I told you that if you didn't follow through with that, you would be going to jail. You
Yes.
understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you're prepared to make sure that happens?
Yes, sir.
Whatever the court orders as bail conditions, it's your obligation to make sure they're followed, or you have to call the numbers on that card I gave you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you have the card in your hand right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My colleague may have some questions.
So, has he been living with you all this time?
No, he's been at his house, and then he lived with me, and then he's now with his girlfriend.
Okay. So at the time of this incident, was he living with Miss Roberts, or was he living with you?
Miss Roberts.
With Miss Roberts, okay. Okay, so at the time that this happened, and so I guess kind of along the lines that the judge was kind of asking, you know, what assurances can you give us? These are fairly serious allegations to make sure that he's going to abide by the rules that the court lays out for him.
Anyway, he's a very obedient guy, he's a loving guy, and he obeys everything he says. He's on the right path.
Okay, but it doesn't look like he was on the right path when this happened, so obviously some bad choices were made,
I would say that, yes.
okay? So how can we assure that he doesn't make those bad choices, well, if he gets out of custody?
I don't think he will.
okay?
Because admin.
You're all right, so you're at him, but are you okay with the fact that if he does make that bad decision, that your responsibility is not to him? As his mom, that's kind of a hard thing, but it's not to him, it's to the court, and to make sure you will report those violations.
Yes, I do.
Okay, you're okay with that fact?
Yes, ma'am.
You're willing to do those things?
Yes, I will.
Okay, and do you understand what the allegations are?
Yes.
Okay, what's your understanding of what's happened here?
He was in shooting.
He was in a shooting, or he's alleged to have done the shooting? Okay, you're kind of shrugging your shoulders.
Yes.
All right, so are there any weapons or guns or anything in your home?
No,
Okay, and you can make sure that he wouldn't have access to any of those?
no.
Okay, and make sure he gets to court on time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and are you aware of any of the people that were involved in this?
No.
Are you okay with the fact that you're gonna have to figure out who those are to make sure that he has no contact with those individuals?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I think it sounds like you would be responsible for him all day long. Now, before we've had cases, you understand that that responsibility is not leaving him in the car while you run into the grocery store. That if you go to the grocery store, he has to go within with you, okay? I don't think I have any more questions.
No, man, you can have a seat. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna give you this piece of paper. Let me have that card back. It's my understanding the card is no longer valid, that this,
Correct.
is valid now. Okay.
Well, I'd give her the card with, scratch out the magistrate's number and just so that it has our number.
No, it's different. No.
Oh, no?
No. Just what I gave you is what's effective.
Okay. But the magistrate number is the only thing different, it looks like, on there. The magistrate number is crossed off, it's still good. The other two numbers are still good. Judge, I present these two third-party custodians, and let me just say procedurally, I can represent to you as an officer of the court.
Oh, wait a minute. Before you do that, I had a couple of questions I
Oh,
wanted to ask
okay.
Ms. Jean-Baptiste. Sorry, Nick. Just a couple of questions. First, it remains to be seen, I guess, there may be a trial, and it's currently scheduled, as to whether he cares about getting himself in trouble or not. Do you think he cares about getting you in trouble?
Yeah.
What? Explain that to me a little bit.
He will not get me into trouble. He has to obey everything I tell him.
Okay.
So I don't think he will want to get me in trouble.
Has he been protective of you as a
Oh,
younger man?
Very much.
Do you agree with Ms. Roberts that the best thing for him when he's got problems like this is to face them rather than run away from them?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions. Go ahead and make your...
Thank you, Judge. I can represent to you as an officer of the court that we received a call on this case. Yes, ma'am, you can have a seat. Let's see. January 9th, actually. January 9th is when my office first talked to Mr. JOHNBAPTISTE, having heard that police were looking at him as the suspect in the shooting. I got in touch with detectives and I asked the detective to, if he would let me know if they got to a point where there was a warrant or a charging document that I would bring Mr. Baptiste in. The officer was kind enough, he said that he would call me. And he did. And he told me he said that he had a warrant and he said he'd like to have Mr. Baptiste in custody by the end of the week. Detective Cordy is the one that called. And that would have been on the 11th. I notified my client on the 11th that they had the warrant and that they wanted him to turn himself in. He turned himself in the very next day to respond to the charges. Now I know that we question third-party custodians and we tell them obviously there was some information or evidence that a person is responsible for the crime, but, you know, I did have a chance to go through the police reports, and there was nothing in here that had people pointing to my client as the one who shot the two people that were shot. One person did say that my client was standing next to someone and supposedly asked him, "Do you have your gun?" Sometime thereafter, it doesn't say how long thereafter, this person heard some shots, and my client obviously was investigated in this, but there was also, and the reason why I go through this is because I know that the court will also look at the strength of the evidence. But there was another person who specifically told some other person, Mr. Coven, that his son was on the run from police for shooting a man and a woman at some club. Now, we will certainly be pursuing our investigation to see exactly what happened in this case and who exactly did what. And also, when I looked at the indictment, Your Honor, I noticed that the indictment reads that my client as principal or accomplice. So that tells me, or gives me some indication that there's still a question about whether my client even did anything, or certainly whether he shot anyone. But be that as it may, for purposes of today, my client only has, as I understand it, driving without insurance as a previous offense, nothing beyond that. That goes to whether he's a danger to the community. I submit he's not a danger to the community. Is he a flight risk? He knew about this all the way back January 9th. Detective Cordy was kind enough to call me. Upon calling, I called him and told him. And I told him he had till the end of the week. He came in the very next morning. He turned himself in. His bail is $10,000 cash, and we're asking that it be cash corporate. That still gives the state $10,000, but it gives my client an opportunity to go through a bondsman. And we have proposed, as the bill requested, third-party custodians. We submit that the third-party custodians are law-abiding citizens. If they weren't, it would likely have been the source of questions from my colleague here. And so with that, Your Honor, our request to the court is a $10,000 cash corporate bond, approval of these third-party custodians, and that's our request.
Thank you. Ms. Reynolds?
Your Honor, at this point, considering the nature of the allegations, I mean, this is a serious drive-by shooting, essentially, that ended up with somebody being shot in the head and 2 other people with serious physical injuries. Based for community safety purposes, I think the state wants to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again, putting innocent people into jeopardy. And Ms. Roberts and Ms. JOHNBAPTISTE appear very strong in this case, but I think the state would like a little bit more assurances, either through electronic monitoring or something, to know his whereabouts, to know what's going, to make sure that if there is a violation, that we get the most immediate notice to be able to ensure that the public safety is adhered to. And need a little bit stronger. So the state would oppose on that reason, as well as any sort of reducing of the monetary bond. It's not money for the state, it's essentially as a deterrence for Mr. Jean-Baptiste to realize that this money is held, that if he violate his conditions and or not appear in court, and I think the state's more concerned at this point with performance than it would be with appearance, to assure that that's an inducement to him to abide by all his conditions, and would ask that that be a performance bond, and that remain at $10,000 cash.
Judge, today is the 14th. My client turned himself in on, I believe, the 11th, Tuesday, whatever Tuesday, the 11th. That's a whole month that he was aware that the police were investigating him, and he was aware that, and I asked him if they get a warrant, please call, but he did. He turned himself in. It's hard to say that the person who was willing to do that on these kinds of charges is a danger to the community. There is a real question about what happened in this case and who did what. I just find specifically the part about this Mr. Coven person. He told somebody that somebody called the police. She wanted to remain anonymous because she was afraid of Mr. Coven. Mr. Coven supposedly himself has got out of jail for murder, the father. And so he tells this girl that the son is on the run from police for this very event. And so I don't know what kind of follow-up the police officers did on it, but we will do it. But the bottom line is my client has entered a not guilty plea to these charges, and he's looking forward to defending himself. He wanted to run, he had that opportunity. If he was a danger to the community, I don't think that the police officers would have left him out there for a whole month, or the state left him out there for a whole month. Even though they knew he was in town, they knew that they could get in touch with him through me. And so I submit that he has already proven himself that he's willing to do the right thing and to fight the case.
Ms. Reynolds, are there any victims that need to be heard from?
Well, the information that I have, it looks like as of yesterday, it looks like it was the first time our paralegal got a hold of the file and attempted to contact the victims in this case, all of which we ended up leaving messages for.
SF was in court at the arraignment, Judge. SF is one of the counts.
Thank you.
She was in court at the arraignment. In fact, she was sitting on the same row as my client's family was.
I'm required to consider the nature and circumstances of the offense charged, as Mr. Butler said, weight of the evidence against the person, family ties and relationships, etc. As to the nature and circumstances, it is a very serious offense that's charged. Weight of the evidence, the state hasn't offered any argument to contradict Mr. Butler's assertions that there is some, the weight is questionable. The person's family ties and relationships appear to be strong. Employment status and history I don't have any information about. Length and character of past and present residence I don't have any information about. I understand that the record of convictions is very, very low. Record of appearances is good, and the fact that Mr. Jean-Baptiste turned himself in is a persuasive point in favor there. Assets available. I'm going to assume there's limited assets available. Reputation, character, and mental condition I don't know anything about. Effect of the offense on the victim, I have to believe that the effect must have been significant. I don't know about any threats made to the victim or danger that the person continues to pose to the victim. And then other facts relevant to appearance or danger to the community. Considering all those, first off, I do approve the third party's custodian.
Thank you, Judge.
Ms. Jean-Baptiste and Ms. Roberts are approved. Let me ask if electronic monitoring were to be a condition of lowering the cash bail, would the parties be able to comply with that?
It's about $600 some odd a month. He won't be working. Mom doesn't work. His girlfriend works, but she has a child that she takes care of, her child.
So I was correct, the assets that are available to Mr. Jean-Baptiste are very limited?
Yes,
Am I
sir.
correct in that?
He's not going to be able to work. Mom doesn't work. His girlfriend is the only one that's working. She has a child that she...
So electronic monitoring is not financially is not a reasonable.
It probably would be difficult for the family to be able to sustain that, Your Honor. But we do have the eyes on him with the third parties, and he's only got a prior of insurance to drive without valid insurance with him. That's all.
I think
26 years old.
it's not clear to me, Ms. Reynolds, do you know whether the $10,000 cash is a cash appearance or cash performance?
It doesn't specify, Your Honor. If you look at the warrant, it just says 10,000 cash plus TPC. I think it's my understanding that typically when they do cash corporate, that's typically appearance, but in this, it doesn't specify whether it's cash appearance or cash performance.
And Judge, if I may comment on that as well, when the judicial officer said that, they had no idea that this young man was going to turn himself in, that he knew ahead of time that they were looking at him, that he did all the right things before coming in. He had no way of knowing those things.
I agree with the state to a certain extent that there needs to be a significant amount of cash. I'm not going to accept the proposal to reduce it as written. I would be willing to change the bail, the cash bail, amount of bail to, and I think there would be an additional benefit in having another set of eyes on Mr. John Baptiste. So I would be willing to change it to 20,000 cash corporate. If that's, but I think 10,000 cash corporate is too low.
Okay, Judge, no objection, 20,000 cash corporate.
Okay, that's my order.
And is that
So,
cash
third-
for appearance?
Pardon?
Cash
Appearance?
corporate is an appearance bond.
Cash corporate appearance bond. So I'm approving the third-party custodian and changing the bail to 20,000 cash corporate appearance. It's to be 24-hour monitoring between the two approved third parties. Any questions from anyone?
No, sir, Judge.
Thank you. Mr. Baptiste, next court appearance is a pretrial conference on the 2nd of April at 2:30.